I've been a Batman fan almost my entire life. The Michael Keaton Batman movie opened in theaters when I was 9 years old, which introduced me to the dark, grim, supposedly serious modern Batman. But I'd also been an avid watcher of the Saturday morning cartoon version of the character, which in turn was influenced by the 1960s Adam West version of the character. This was a few years before Batman the Animated Series, remember? And once I got into the comics, I began reading not only the then new stuff, but reprints of the old stuff from the 1940s and 50s too. As a result, I have an appreciation for Batmen of all eras. I love a gritty Batman and a goofy Batman. So how am I not going to love a comic book that has both a goofy Batman and a gritty Batman at the same time? Okay, technically not at the same time. One after the other, but in the same book. Actually, it's two books if you want to get picky about it. 2 volumes, but it's all one story. One story about 2 times Batman and Robin, 2 Robins to be precise, different Robins for each half of the story. Anyway, the story is about Batman and 2 different Robins coming face to face with Two-Face. Face to face to face to face to face, right? Because Batman's got a face, Robin's got a face, other Robin's got a face. That's 3. And then Two-Face has a face and a face. So Batman and 2 Robins coming face to face to face to face to face with Two-Face. Just imagine them all standing in a circle looking at each other. That's not in the story. I'm talking about Batman Two-Face Strikes Twice. Originally published in 1993, written by Mike W. Barr, with art by Joe Staton and Derek Gross Sr. So, like I said, it's 2 volumes, 1 overall story, told through 2 different adventures where Batman and whoever was Robin at the time takes on Two-Face. One story takes place early in Batman's career and is told in a style that mimics the Golden Age Batman. That part is drawn by Joe Staton, doing an outstanding impersonation of Dick Sprang. By the way, Dick Sprang himself contributed cover art. How cool is that? Dick Sprang covers in 1993. The other story takes place during the present day of Batman's career and is told in a more modern style, and that part is painted by Derek Gross Sr. Volume 1 contains part 1 of each story, and Volume 2 contains part 2 of each story, and the stories are printed tête bêche style, back to back and rotated. So when you finish reading the first story, you just have to turn the book over and read the second one. It's a fun gimmick that ties in with the story and the villain. Volume 1 of Two-Face Strikes Twice begins with the first half of the Golden Age style story, The Two Faces of Janus. Batman and Robin, Robin being Dick Grayson, take a tour of an anti-crime exhibition that's about to open in Gotham Park. There are several souvenirs from the dynamic duo's career on display, including a gigantic coin which Two-Face once used to try to kill them. On the drive home, Batman expresses sympathy for Two-Face, reminding Robin and us of the circumstances through which Harvey Dent became Two-Face. The acid thrown on half his face, the defaced coin that he flips to make decisions, the whole bit. So many of our foes are evil by choice, Batman says, but Harvey Dent had no say in what happened to him. A commendable display of empathy from the Cape Crusader. Then Robin says, I guess there are 2 sides to every story. And Batman's like, Git! Especially Harvey Dent's! Always empathy. The next day, Gilda, Harvey Dent's ex-wife, pays Two-Face a visit at Gotham State Prison, where he's been locked up for, I'm assuming, just a whole bunch of crimes. Gilda walks up to Two-Face's cell and says, Hey, I just wanted to stop by and tell you that I'm getting married to a doctor named Paul Janus. Isn't that great? Two-Face's tight-lipped reaction suggests that he does not think it's so great. Gilda runs outside into the waiting arms of her fiancé, Dr. Paul Janus, who wisely did not accompany her inside. Gilda's like, I thought Harvey would be thrilled by the news that I'm marrying someone else. I just don't understand it. After Gilda leaves, Two-Face arranges a meeting with the assistant warden, the second in command, at the prison. Get it? And volunteers for duty in the prison infirmary, claiming that he wants work to take his mind off the depressing news about his ex-wife's upcoming marriage. This, of course, is part of an escape plan. which Two-Face successfully executes a few days later by mixing up some knockout gas using chemicals from the infirmary and releasing it into the prison through the ventilation system. A quick wardrobe change and a coin flip later, and Two-Face is on his way to crash Gilda and Dr. Janus's wedding. Over at Gilda's apartment, she's gotten the news about Two-Face's escape, and Janus shows up to comfort her. As they embrace, we see that Gilda has a bust of Harvey Dent in her apartment. That probably doesn't bode well for the marriage. Like, I'm no expert in these matters, but if you get engaged to someone and you go over to their place and they have a fucking statue of their most recent ex, maybe hold off on setting a date. The day of the wedding arrives, Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson are in attendance. Everything goes well with the ceremony until the preacher pulls off his Mission Impossible mask to reveal that he's actually Two-Face, and then throws acid in Dr. Janus's face. Like, how you like that, Gilda? You want to marry him now? Some of Two-Face's hired goons rob the wedding guests while Two-Face abducts Janus. Bruce and Dick change into their Batman and Robin costumes and make a valiant effort to catch the crooks, but Two-Face and his henchmen manage to get away. That night, Two-Face drops off the cash and jewels his gang stole from the wedding guests outside a rescue mission, a classic Two-Face move. His evil side compels him to rob, while his good side compels him to give away the loot. Hoping to catch Two-Face and safely return Janus to Gilda's side, Batman and Robin camp out in the rafters at the site of the Gotham Book Fair, where Batman guesses Two-Face will strike next. Why? Because the book fair features autographed first editions of The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells and Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. 2 books, 2 authors, same title, a prize Two-Face will never be able to resist. Batman's right, as he almost always is, especially during the Golden Age. Two-Face appears, backed up by his goons from the wedding and his newest partner, Janus, who has been turned and has now joined the gang, wearing a two-faced mask, designed after the Roman god Janus. At one point, Janus lifts the mask to show Batman that his entire face has been scarred by the acid thrown by Two-Face at the wedding. Batman's like, oh shit, hey, no worries, man, it's not that bad. We'll get you some plastic surgery, fix you right up. Following another scuffle, Two-Face and Janus and most of the gang escape when Two-Face sets off the sprinkler system, and Batman and Robin stay behind to make sure the rare books aren't damaged. Those are some upright citizens right there. Fortunately, one of Two-Face's gang is caught. He doesn't crack under questioning from Batman, Robin, and Commissioner Gordon, so Batman just grabs the guy's shoe and calls it a night. Then he stops by the wedding venue and finds a spot where some of the acid Two-Face threw at Janus splashed onto the carpet. Batman tests the acid and finds something that only deepens the mystery at the center of these events. It's not actually acid at all. It's not corrosive, just a harmless chemical. So why did Janus look like that when he lifted his mask? Why is he going along with Two-Face's crimes? Have Janus and Two-Face been conspiring together all along? The only way to answer those questions is to catch Two-Face and Janus, so Batman analyzes some mud taken from that shoe he took from Two-Face's arrested goon and traces it back to Gotham Park. As Batman and Robin race over there in the Batmobile, Robin speculates that the man in the Janus mask isn't actually Paul Janus at all. Batman shares that he's looked into Janus's finances and found him to be seriously in debt. A possible motive for Janus to turn to crime? Batman and Robin track Two-Face's gang to the Gotham Park Zoo, but Two-Face gets the drop on them and knocks them out with an electrified net. They carry Batman and Robin over to the anti-crime exhibit, and when Batman and Robin regain consciousness a bit later, they find themselves tied up and placed in the path of that giant coin, which Two-Face is preparing to roll down the hill and crush them. To be continued in Part 2, but first, it's time to flip the book over for another Part 1. This modern-era story is titled The Tragedy of Twins, and it opens with Gilda Janus now, having a dream about her newborn twin boys. In the dream, the doctor who delivers her babies is Two-Face, and the twins are Two-Face babies! This is obviously a dream. In real life, how are you going to get a baby to hold still long enough to throw acid on only half their face? Paul Janus comforts Gilda and tells her that Two-Face has probably forgotten all about them. Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne is convinced that Two-Face has not forgotten all about Gilda and Paul Janus, so he heads down to the Batcave, where he meets Tim Drake, who is Robin in this one. Bruce talks over some of his concerns regarding Two-Face while Tim watches him put on his jockstrap. Batman goes to Arkham Asylum and gets there in time to interrupt Two-Face's escape attempt. With the help of an accomplice and some explosives, Two-Face gets away and heads straight over to Gilda and Paul Janus's place, where he abducts the twins. Gilda and Janus walk in on Two-Face taking the kids. Janus offers to pay Two-Face whatever he wants to not take the babies, but Two-Face refuses, saying that he's been hired by someone else to carry out the kidnapping. Two-Face leaves before Gilda can tell him something important about the twins. He takes the babies to his hideout, where this guy, Dr. Moon, examines them and comes back with bad news. Apparently, the client who hired Two-Face was hoping Gilda and Janus had used a fertility drug developed by Dr. Janus to get pregnant, but tests show no signs of the drug in the twin systems. So, Two-Face calls Janus and says, "Hey, you know what? I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Give me some of that fertility drug." Janus is like, "I can have it for you at my lab in an hour, but bring my children." Two-Face is like, "Ugh, fine." Batman overhears the phone call between Janus and Two-Face. He brings in Robin and they head over to Janus's office. Janus is there. Two-Face arrives but informs Janus that he decided not to bring the twins with him, promising to give back the babies as soon as he has the formula for the fertility drug. Janus pulls a gun and demands Two-Face return his children. One of Two-Face's goons easily disarms Janus, and Two-Face flips his coin and, seeing it land bad side up, orders his goons to just kill Janus. Batman and Robin come crashing through a window, saving Janus and stopping Two-Face from getting his hands on the fertility drug. Two-Face gets away again, but not before sneaking a peek at the names of some of Janus's patients who may have received the drug. Fortunately, Robin got a look at the names too before the computer's memory was erased, and the dynamic duo are able to set a trap. Two-Face checks the names on the stolen patients list against recent birth announcements and comes up with the name of a wealthy aerospace executive. Two-Face and his gang pay this guy a visit, but they find Batman instead. With Robin elsewhere playing lookout, Batman tussles with Two-Face and his goons and, just like in the cliffhanger of the first story, finds himself all trussed up, about to be crushed to death, not by a giant coin this time, but by a giant telescope lens. Two-Face is like, "Hey, I get to try and kill Batman using the same method twice!" Of course, it didn't work the first time, but I'm choosing to be optimistic. Can I choose that? Do I need to flip the coin for that? Actually, I haven't told you what happens in the conclusion of the first story yet, so you don't know if Batman and Robin are killed by that big-ass coin or not. Maybe they die. Sure, you're saying, but Steve, obviously they survive because the second story takes place years after the first, and Batman's in it, which couldn't happen if Batman died in the first one, but you don't know that. What if Batman dies in the first story and he's able to be in the second story because he's a zombie? There are no such things as zombies in the real world, so far as we know as of now. But does that mean there aren't zombies in the fictional world of this comic book? No, it does not. You don't know that Batman survives that big-ass coin trap from the first story. You presume he does, and when you presume, you make an ass of you and me. Anyway, here's how Batman survives the big-ass coin trap. The conclusion of the Golden Age style story is titled The Secret of Janus, and we pick up where we left off with Batman and Robin tied up and placed in the path of that big-ass coin that's about to be rolled over them. Things aren't looking good for the dynamic duo. Their utility belts have been taken, and they've been tied up so expertly that they'll never be able to undo the ropes before that coin rolls over them. Luckily, Two-Face sends Janus down to gloat for a bit before they push the coin down the hill. Janus is like, "So how are we feeling about being fatally smushed by an absurdly oversized silver dollar?" Batman says, "Not great, but you know who I feel bad for? Your fiancée Gilda." Janus says, "Yeah, well, it's better that she be sad now than be sad for the rest of her life because she's married to the fucking Toxic Avenger over here. Know what I'm saying? Anyway, have a nice death." While Janus makes his way back up the hill to Two-Face, Batman and Robin seize their chance at escape. Instead of trying to free themselves from the ropes, they press back to back, push their feet against the sides of the trench they've been placed in, and walk themselves up, managing to flip out of the deadly path of the coin with no time to spare. Batman and Robin fight Two-Face's goons and take them out while still tied up, but Two-Face and Janus escape, with Two-Face saying something about adding to Janus's collection. Batman and Robin are both a little incredulous that Paul Janus has been turned to Two-Face's criminal ways so quickly and easily, so they head to Janus's place to investigate what may have happened to him. They discover a broken window outside Janus's bedroom. Batman fits the shards of glass together and finds a small hole. A bullet hole, maybe? Gilda walks in on Batman and Robin in the bedroom. Not like that, you perverts. They're crime fighters. They're not in that bedroom to fool around with each other. They're doing detective stuff. Don't let the costumes fool you. They're nothing more than a couple of colorfully clad dicks. Not like that. Well, literally that in Robin's case. Whatever, it's not like that. Robin's a little young for that sort of thing. Don't you think? Batman's secret identity is Bruce Wayne, not Jeffrey Epstein. Anyway, Gilda tells Batman that she didn't see Paul Janus on the day of their wedding until she actually walked in for the ceremony. Tradition. You know, the bride and the groom aren't supposed to see each other before the wedding. Gilda says Janus seemed a little distant before Two-Face revealed himself and everything went to shit. Batman and Robin leave, and Batman sure seems like he's figured out what's going on, but he's not telling yet. Having overheard Two-Face say that thing about adding to Janus's collection and knowing that Janus has a large private art collection, Batman and Robin, as Bruce Wayne and Dick, attend a reception at the Gotham Art Museum where a new Van Gogh exhibit is being unveiled. The artist, Vincent van Gogh, was named after his own brother, who died a year before he was born, making Van Gogh the second of his parents' children to be given that name. A two connection that Two-Face won't be able to resist. He really is a deeply troubled man. Batman's right, of course. Two-Face and his gang show up at the reception. They've been hiding in suits of armor on display on the museum floor. Why are there always suits of armor in museums like this? It's an art museum. Ditch the armor. Are you trying to get robbed? Bruce and Dick change into their Batman and Robin costumes, fight off Two-Face's goons, but Batman allows Two-Face to get away with some loot. Why? So Batman and Robin can catch one of Two-Face's flunkies guiltily donating the loot to a rescue mission, so they can then follow that flunky back to Two-Face's hideout, which is located at an old bus garage. The dynamic duo bursts in, there's another big fight, and at one point Janus tries to escape by driving off in one of the buses. Batman pops the tire, Janus crashes the bus, Batman rushes around and discovers that Janus is not actually scarred by acid, it's only makeup. For his part, Janus is insisting that he's completely innocent. After the fight, at the end of which Two-Face escapes again, this time by knocking Robin out by throwing his coin at him. Two-Face has obviously been training with Ricky Jay. They take Janus to police headquarters, where, after the makeup is removed, he shares his story. As Janus tells it, what happened was, Two-Face broke in the night before his wedding to Gilda and abducted him. That was a look-alike at the wedding ceremony. Janus says Two-Face kept him captive at the hideout, and that his double switched places with him on the bus to frame him. Gilda, who is present for the interrogation, wants to believe Janus's story, but Robin isn't buying it. He steps up and calls bullshit, pointing out the glass shards they found at Janus's house were outside the bedroom window, not inside as they would have been if someone had broken in. That means Janus was breaking out to willingly join Two-Face. Janus protests, but Commissioner Gordon's like, sounds good to me, nice work, Robin, take this piece of shit away, boys. That takes care of Janus, apparently, but there's still the matter of capturing Two-Face. Batman's got a plan for that. A news broadcast reporting the story of Janus's arrest prominently mentions his medical research into fertilization and making twins. Two-Face is interested, flips his coin, and we cut to Two-Face and his gang ransacking Janus's office looking for his research. Batman and Robin catch them in the act, there's another fight, and this time, finally, everyone gets caught, including Two-Face, and including this goon who Batman notices has makeup under his fingernails, which leads Batman to deduce that this guy was impersonating Janus, which means Janus was telling the truth. He wasn't going along willingly with Two-Face. He had been abducted and replaced by an imposter. But what about the window glass outside the bedroom? Robin thought he was so smart when he figured that out. Well, guess what? Robin don't know shit. Batman explains what actually happened. That little hole they found in the broken glass, it wasn't a bullet hole, it was a hole drilled into the glass so that Two-Face could pull it out and make it look like Janus had broken it from the inside. Very clever. Way more clever than Robin, that hapless shithead. So all's well that ends well. Janus is exonerated, he and Gilda are back together, and Robin has memorialized his humiliating failure as a detective, which led him to falsely accuse an innocent man by putting the broken shards of window glass on display in the Batcave. Batman's like, "Don't worry about being such a dogshit detective, Robin. You've got time to get better, unlike Two-Face." Batman's right, of course. Two-Face doesn't get better. He stays the same, almost exactly the same, in fact, because Batman's predicament when we pick up the second story is the same as it was when we picked up the first story. Just swap out a big coin for a big lens. Part 2 of Story 2 is titled A Truth with Two Edges, and as it begins, we find Batman all tied up in a trench while Two-Face's goons prepare to roll that big lens down on top of him. Robin, who was on lookout duty, remember, watches through binoculars from a nearby tree. He's been ordered by Batman not to interfere, but to follow Two-Face back to his hideout should he escape. Robin's like, "Batman didn't say, even if I'm about to be fatally crushed in a trench by having a big telescope lens rolled over me, but was it implied?" Realizing he needs to stall for time, Batman calls Two-Face over, like, "Hey, man, you forgot to flip your coin. That's your whole deal. Don't tell me you're gonna kill me and not even flip your coin first. That's bullshit." Two-Face says, "I flipped it already and it was bad side up. That's why you're in this death trap." Batman's like, "Yeah, but activating the death trap and killing me is a separate decision. That needs its own coin flip, dude. Pretty embarrassing that I have to tell you this." Two-Face is like, "Oh, Christ, fine. There, bad side up again. Are you happy?" As Two-Face stomps away, we see that Batman has been digging up some of the tiles that line the bottom of the trench. Just then, Robin decides to act and throws some smoke bombs to distract Two-Face and his goons. It doesn't do Robin much good. Two-Face ties him up with a bolo and orders the goons to get that lens rolling. They do, but as the lens reaches Batman, it hits that little pile of dug-up tile Batman made, jumps over Batman, and cracks to pieces when it hits the ground again. Two-Face is furious, like, "Why does he keep escaping when I tie him up and roll enormous coin-shaped objects at him? How many more times am I gonna have to do this?" By the time Batman is able to free himself and get out of the trench, Two-Face has gotten away and taken Robin with him. Back at his hideout, the creepy doctor who is working with Two-Face is fantasizing about cracking open Robin's skull and rooting around in his brains, but Two-Face says to hold off on all that until they've completed the job they were hired to do. Speaking of which, Two-Face leaves to go meet with his clients, a prince and princess from Europe who want the fertility drug Janus developed so they can have a baby in time to produce an heir and prevent a war in their home country. Back at Paul Janus's laboratory, Batman drops in to update Commissioner Gordon on how he just let Two-Face escape and capture his adolescent partner, crime-fighting partner, Dr. Wortham. Jeez. While Batman's at the lab, Gilda pulls him aside and says, "Hey, so there are a couple of relevant facts about our twins you should probably know. First of all, as Two-Face has no doubt already discovered, they weren't conceived using Paul's fertility drug. And second, the twins are not Paul's biological children. They're Harvey's. See, I had some of Harvey's frozen sperm from back when we were married, and it turned out that Paul wasn't able to give me children, so one night I got a turkey baster and maybe if Harvey knew they were his children too, he wouldn't hurt them." Batman's like, "Maybe. Does Dr. Janus know?" Gilda's like, "No, should I tell him?" Batman's like, "Yeah, I think maybe you should." So Gilda goes right over and tells her husband that their children are actually not biologically his, but Two-Face's, and we don't hear what they say to each other, but it looks like he takes it pretty well. Hey, I have a question. How did Paul Janus not know? He's a doctor, a fertility doctor. If he and his wife were struggling to conceive children and his fertility was the issue, wouldn't he know that? And if his wife suddenly got pregnant and claimed it was from him, which Gilda apparently did, wouldn't he see straight through that? And once she started having nightmares about how her twin babies were little Two-Faces, wouldn't he put that together? How much of a clod is this guy? What does Gilda even see in him? She could do so much better. And worse. Sure, she could do worse. Good point. Batman interrupts another attempted twin abduction by Two-Face at the home of a couple who conceived using Dr. Janus's fertility drug. This scene includes my favorite two-panel sequence in either volume. This one, where Batman stops Two-Face from blowing the husband's brains out by kicking a gun at him. Harvey! What? Ow! One of Two-Face's thugs, Four Eyes, who appears in both this story and its Golden Age-style predecessor, knocks Batman out, allowing Two-Face and his gang to get away with the babies. When Batman wakes up, he has a question. How did Two-Face know to come to this house and abduct those twins? Batman got their name from Dr. Janus's client list on the computer, but Two-Face never actually got to see that client list. Somebody who did see the client list must have tipped him off, and that someone had to have been Gilda. Batman confronts Gilda with the accusation that she's secretly been helping Two-Face, and she's so offended that she smacks the shit out of Batman. I would never jeopardize someone else's children just to save my own, she says. Would you do that to save Robin? Batman's like, Robin? Of course not. I'm already on my third one of those. Oh, wait, that gives me an idea. Gotta go. Sorry for accusing you of being in league with your supervillain ex-husband who stole your babies. The prince and the princess have arrived at Two-Face's hideout, where the princess is about to receive an injection of the fertility drug, which the creepy doctor has derived from the blood of the second set of twins Two-Face abducted. But before the creepy doctor can stick the needle in, Batman crashes through the window. Two-Face is like, "How did you find me?" And Batman says, "I suddenly remembered that Robin's suit has a tracking device, so I just traced it to here. Plus, I realized that you must have accessed the computer interface in Robin's uniform, which still has a record of what Robin was able to grab from Janus's database before it was erased, which is how you got a look at Janus's client list." Another fight, Batman and Robin take out Two-Face's thugs, but Two-Face himself points a shotgun at the Janus twins and threatens to blow them away. He flips his coin, and it lands bad side up. Batman steps up and tells Two-Face that the Janus twins are actually his biological children. Two-Face believes him and throws a shotgun blast into the shoulder of the creepy doctor who is standing over the twins with a scalpel. Two-Face gives himself up. He says to Batman before he's taken away, "Will you tell Gilda? Tell her what I did?" Batman says he will, and he thanks Two-Face for giving him hope. Remember, Two-Face's coin told him to kill those babies, but he chose not to. Gilda rushes in, is reunited with her twins, and then Paul Janus comes in too. It's the first time he and Gilda have spoken since she told him the truth about the twins being Two-Face's biological children. They reconcile. Janus is like, "I wasn't sure for a while, but I am now." Also, can we finally get that bust of Harvey Dent out of the house? Or at least move it so it's not in our bedroom facing the bed? Please. And that's the end. I'll be honest with you, the gimmicky format of this one is half the reason I'm talking about it. Half. Two-Face. I'm doing the thing! It's just a fun idea. 2 stories, the second a sequel to the first, printed in 2 volumes where volume 1 has the first half of both stories and volume 2 has the second half of both stories. It's an interesting way of playing with the dynamics of a cliffhanger. You get part 1 of the first story, and then before you get that story's conclusion, you get part 1 of the sequel. And the circumstances at the beginning of the sequel give a few things away about how the first story is going to turn out without going into any specifics. So, instead of a conventional cliffhanger at the end of part 1 of the first story, we're left with a gap that needs to be filled in. We know from the first half of the sequel that Paul Janus is alive and out of prison and still with Gilda, so that whole deal with him being in league with Two-Face in the first story will be resolved in his favor, but we don't know how until we read volume 2. The 2 stories interact with each other in more ways than through the delayed resolution of the first cliffhanger. Like most originals and sequels, they share a roughly similar shape and carry many of the same basic story beats. Both stories involve Two-Face committing crimes related to his ex-wife. Both stories feature Gilda and her new man, Paul Janus, at major milestones in their relationship, their wedding in the first story, having recently had children in the second. Both stories see Gilda and Paul separated for a time before reuniting at the end. And both stories show us that, despite his cruelty and violence, Two-Face still has feelings for Gilda. Twisted, deeply messed up feelings. Both stories have cliffhangers midway through where Batman is about to be crushed by a large, heavy disc, a coin in the first one, a telescope lens in the second. Both stories have hilariously ineffectual Robins. Dick reaching the wrong investigative conclusion about the broken window in the first one, Tim getting himself captured by Two-Face in the second. Both stories lean really hard on Batman and Robin failing and letting Two-Face escape multiple times until it's time to catch him for good at the end. Okay, that last one is more of an editorial comment. It's true, though. It's less of an issue in the Golden Age style story, where writer Barr usually comes up with a suitably goofy excuse for why Batman and Robin are letting Two-Face get away, Batman's overriding concern for protecting the rare books from damage, for example. In the modern style sequel, we mostly see Batman just getting knocked the fuck out, or standing back and watching Two-Face take Robin without even trying to pursue. And while I'm on that subject, why does it take Batman so long to remember he can track Robin through his costume? The plotting isn't exactly airtight in either story, but it really shows through in the second one, which doesn't have the appealing Golden Age silliness to carry us through the sometimes glaring gaps in logic and narrative. I love that the two stories have totally different tones and styles, both in terms of the writing and the art. It goes along with the opposing dual natures of Two-Face. One story is light and colorful, the other is narratively and visually much more dramatic. And because the two stories are so different in their presentation, if you don't like one because of the tone or style, you might still like the other. Is the front not doing it for you? Flip it over to the back. See if you like that better. The thing is, that gimmick and the opposing styles and tones of the two stories are both the greatest strength and the greatest weakness of Two-Face Strikes Twice. The idea is good, the concept is sound, but the two stories are not equal in terms of quality. The first one, the Golden Age pastiche, is just a lot better than the second one. It's bright, it's fun, it's obvious that Mike Barr and Joe Staton are having a blast embracing the over-the-top silliness typical of comics from that era. The sequel, because it takes itself superficially more seriously, can't help but draw attention to how haphazardly plotted it is. Inconsistencies like Batman taking forever to remember he can track Robin through his costume, or Paul Janus not knowing his children with Gilda aren't his biologically, even though he's a fertility doctor who is apparently infertile himself, would just be breezily glossed over in the first story, but in the second one they stand out immediately. The second story, in both volumes, also suffers from some unfortunate production errors, resulting in word balloons pointing at the wrong character, or being left out entirely so that a character is shown to be responding to something that nobody actually said. Not sure what happened there. The artwork is good in both stories. I prefer Joe Staton's boldly rendered primary colored recreation of the DC universe circa the mid-1940s, but Derek Gross Sr.'s painting in the second story is excellent in its own right, fluid, dynamic, dreamlike, and occasionally weird in very specific ways, like this panel showing Two-Face pulling a syringe out of the back of one hand with his teeth while pulling a gun on Batman with the other hand. The body language appears strange, but when I think about it, I guess if you ever had to do that, that's how that would look. I can't speak from experience. Despite its shortcomings, especially in its modern style I've always liked Two-Face Strikes Twice. Two-Face is one of Batman's marquee villains, but there aren't as many memorable stories featuring Two-Face as there are with, say, the Joker or Bane or Ra's al Ghul. Through both parts of this story, we see an appropriately conflicted version of Two-Face, torn not just between the good and bad halves of his nature, but also between separate motivations for his crimes. In both stories, he acts both to enrich himself and to lash out against his ex-wife, who he feels abandoned by, but still loves. The story doesn't strike this note too hard, but there is a tragedy to Two-Face here. There's some part of him that wants to go back to the way things were with Gilda before, to regain what he has lost, even though he knows that's not possible. My favorite thing about Two-Face Strikes Twice, though, ties back to that two-sided gimmick for each volume, and to my appreciation for both the cheerfully ridiculous early Caped Crusader Batman and the more tortured Dark Knight of modern times. The grinning, wisecracking Batman of the first story and the severe, intimidating Batman of the second story could not be more different from one another in terms of look or personality, but they are the exact same guy. The second story is a sequel to the first. Both stories exist in the same world, the same continuity. They are each one half of the same complete work. Some of you might protest that the Golden Age Batman lived on Earth 2 and the modern Batman during the era of DC Comics in which this book was published lived on New Earth, which was part of the post-crisis reality in which that version of the DC universe existed, so they can't actually be considered the same person. And to that I say, who let you out of your locker, nerd? Did the janitor finally get sick of hearing you crying and banging on the door and take pity on you? Shut your pedantic ass up and go play hero clicks with the other nerds or whatever you do. Leave the rest of us alone while we talk about cool people shit like this Batman comic from 1993 that you can flip upside down. Fucking nerd. I take a less literal approach than my hypothetical canon-obsessed nemesis, to whom I just playfully and good-naturedly referred. Golden Age or Modern Age, 1940s or 1990s or 2020s, Earth 2, Earth 1, New Earth, Prime Earth, that Earth where everything is made of Lego. It doesn't matter when the story was created or where in the fucking multiverse it's meant to take place. Batman is Batman. And I like having a book that acknowledges that has fun with that reminds us that there is no single definitive take on the character that excludes all the others. Batman can be happy and smiling, or driven and tormented, or something else completely. There is no right or wrong approach to the character. It all depends on the execution, on the quality of the story at hand. Batman is Batman. And in the hands of writers and artists with a good story to tell and the skills to tell it, any Batman, Caped Crusader or Dark Knight, has the potential to be the best Batman ever.